Well, happy Tuesday, y'all. Welcome to TLT with Lita. Welcome to you all on the YouTube platform. Welcome on IG. Welcome on TikTok. Y'all come on in. Let's get into our leadership tip for today. I'm excited about it. As always, I am always humbled and honored to get on live with you all each Tuesday and talk about leadership. So I'm giving you a few seconds, a minute or so to come in. Y'all come on in. Let's get into it. All right. All right, y'all. I don't know what's going on with this platform, but okay. All right, y'all. Let's get into it again. Welcome, welcome, welcome to Tuesday Leadership Tips with Lita. Today's leadership tip is this. I told y'all last week that we were going to continue talking about staying grounded in humility. So, our leadership tip for today is dun, da, 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 it is be prepared for the other side of being a humble leader. Be prepared for the other side of being a humble leader. Last week, we talked about leadership isn't loud, it's grounded in humility. We talked about how humility builds trust. We talked about how it invites wisdom and multiplies the impact. We talked about all of that. We even talked about pride. We talked about what pride does and how strong leaders don't lead to impress, they lead to empower. We talked about staying teachable, staying grounded, and how that's real strength. And I also gave you all reasons why pride can creep in. But you know something? I said we got to bring this thing full circle and bring some balance into what we're talking about because I don't want it to be like everybody's being attacked by pride because that's not the case in every situation. However, being a humble leader, it does come with its own challenges. It comes with a side of humility that if you're not careful, or if you don't have a mentor or a coach or someone to kind of prepare you for it, you will think that being humble means that everything's going to go smoothly and everybody's going to go with what you say and everybody's going to believe in you and you're going to be wonderful and you're going to be like Superman and Wonder Woman. And that's not always the case. In fact, humble leaders often experience a unique set of challenges that come with that approach of that servant leadership, that humble leadership. While humility is an incredible, powerful trait to have, it doesn't always translate to immediate recognition or appreciation. It just doesn't always translate. So let's talk about what might happen to you if you are a humble leader as you navigate. Sometimes you may experience being underestimated. You may experience being overlooked. You may experience being undervalued, misunderstood, and sometimes you can be used. So let's talk about what that looks like a little bit. So when you have you have made a decision, this is who you are, a humble individual who is going to lead from that standpoint. Sometimes you can be underestimated, not just you, but others can underestimate your capabilities because they are not constantly um, looking at the pros versus the cons. And as a humble leader, you're not always tooting your own horn. You're not always seeking the spotlight. And some may perceive that as less competent. Sometimes they may perceive that as you're not as ambitious as your peers. So sometimes you can be underestimated because people don't understand why you do what you do and why you are the way you are. That's why it's so important to be clear. When people understand the type of leader that you are, then they know how to receive your leadership. They don't push back on your leadership style. And leaders who aren't prepared for this type of thing, sometimes they can feel frustrated. Sometimes you can start having feelings of being overlooked. I don't know about you, but I have seen where people have basically brushed off a humble leader because they think they're not tough enough. And see, that's the stigma that people have for leaders, that they got to be rough and tough. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't be clear, because you can be clear, you can be kind. You can be both. And so um when that leader is somehow walking as a person who doesn't need the spotlight, sometimes others won't recognize your true potential as a leader. Now, we're going to talk about that a little bit more as we get into this discussion, that sometimes people won't understand you, and sometimes they will devalue or undervalue your potential. They'll overlook your contributions, and or they can fail to involve you in critical decision making. And I think it's important that as a humble leader, that you have to speak up for yourself. You have to speak up for yourself, because if you don't, you'll find yourself, especially those who are team leaders and managers, you have to speak up for yourself, because if not, you'll get passed over for promotions. You'll get excluded from major opportunities simply because you don't loudly claim what you do and what you've achieved. But that should not be the case just because you're humble, because you may very well be the person that is just as capable, if not more so, than the people around you. So being that humble leader sometimes can give off the I think what it gives off is an air that you're less competent, that you're less available, that you don't care as much. All these different things people can be thinking. But what you don't want to do is allow yourself as the leader to be frustrated or to start feeling a certain way because of how people react to your leadership style, your leadership way. Now, this can also be an opportunity of surprise. I've experienced this myself, where people underestimate you so much so, but then they get surprised when they see you win. They get surprised when they see the results that you bring to the table, and then your work speaks for itself. That may be the case sometimes, but then there are other times where the work doesn't come forth at the right time and it doesn't speak at the right time. So you got to be one to speak up for yourself. You got to be one to speak up for yourself. And so that is one thing that humble leaders definitely have to deal with from time to time, and that's being underestimated. Being underestimated. And sometimes you can feel overlooked. Humility to people on the outside who don't understand who you are, to them, it means that you don't demand attention or recognition for yourself. Though that may be how you operate, that you don't demand attention and you don't try to bring the attention to yourself. This can foster a healthy team focused environment, and it can also result in the efforts being overlooked. So your contributions may be quiet, but you got to be careful that they are not unnoticed, because people will start taking your presence for granted. People will start thinking they can do your job or they can take your job because they don't see your contributions. The type of environment that we live in now, we live in this recognition type environment where it's based on visibility and self promotion. And when you're a humble leader, if you're not careful, sometimes you'll fade into the background, even though your influence is significant. It's almost like they want to push you to be loud, but you're not loud. They want to push you to be hard, and you're not a hard person. And so, what I'm saying is, when times come where you feel overlooked, where you're being overlooked, if you don't engage where you need to engage, it can lead to you feeling isolated and invisible. So, humble leaders, I know we understand value from our internal drive. We don't necessarily need people to motivate us. We're like self-motivated people. And so we are not driven so much by external recognition. But when you get into these environments where your humility is in question as it relates to you being a humble leader and being a capable leader, you have to speak up for yourself. It's important to ensure that your efforts aren't completely ignored. If you are putting in the work, don't let your efforts go completely ignored, because this can lead to burnout and disengagement. You'll find yourself working hard. I'm talking about making big progress, making big results in whatever it is that you're doing. But because it keeps going overlooked, it can cause you to be burnt out. It can cause you to disengage. And we need our leaders to be present and operating. And so another thing that happens on the other side of being a humble leader is being undervalued. I think this is so sad. And as I'm thinking about being undervalued, sometimes humble leaders can put the needs of others first and may not vocalize the value that you bring to the table. And sometimes when you leave the value that you bring to the table unheard or unseen, you can be undervalued. And so being undervalued, not just by people who may be, let's say, above you, but also the people who are around you or the people who are working with you or working for you. It can look like this, that your hard work and your contributions, that they are not fully acknowledged, especially if you don't advocate for yourselves. You are your biggest advocate, leaders. If you don't advocate for you, who else will? Because listen, nobody knows all that you do better than you do. So you got to advocate for yourself. And if you don't, you may not receive, listen to me. Y'all need to listen to me carefully here. You may not receive the compensation that you deserve. You may not receive the respect you deserve or the opportunities that you deserve. While other people may be standing around seeking recognition and getting the opportunities because you didn't raise an eyebrow, you didn't raise your hand, you didn't open your mouth and say, hey, this is my contribution to this project. This is what I brought to this table. I headed this up. This was my idea. This was what I implemented. You're going to have to advocate for yourself. You are your biggest advocate. And I know sometimes we may have some of the best leaders ever, but this is something that I know that even the best leaders, the most humble leaders, they're going to ask you when they're doing your evaluation, hey, did I miss anything? Did I miss anything that you did? You know, I know you did some wonderful things, but if there is anything that I missed, I want you to bring it to my attention right now. Because, see, you want to get credit for what you brought, you want to get credit for what you've done. You got to advocate for yourself. You know, I remember this one leader, and he doesn't even know, probably doesn't even know that I feel like this, and probably doesn't know. He definitely doesn't know that I'm getting ready to say, and I'm gonna say his name because he was probably one of the most humble leaders that I've ever worked for. And he was a major in the military, Major Caldwell. I'll never forget his name. He's one of those greats that in my one of my leaders books when I was in the military, I wrote down all the names of the leaders who had an impact on my in my life and over my life. And he's probably one of the definitely one of the most humble leaders. And he was the type where he would say, "Hey, leader, this is what I need to get done. This is what we need to have happen before this date. Can you make that happen?" And I was like, "Yes, sir. Got it." But he was never one that would like blow up, get angry, or do that wild stuff that some leaders do. He was never one of those. He was always cool, calm, and collected. He was always one representing what he stood for and what he believed. So even if his boss was yelling and carrying on, he came to those that worked on staff with him cool, calm, and collected. And so I said all that to say that, listen to me. When I'm saying be humble, I don't mean be passive. I mean, exercise assertiveness when needed. When I say be assertive, I don't mean be manipulative. I don't mean use assertiveness to manipulate and control a situation or a person. Not saying that at all. In fact, don't do that. You can avoid being overlooked, however. You can avoid being underestimated. You can avoid being undervalued by being assertive and expressing what you really want and what you really need. And so I do want to make this a quick recommendation. I was thinking about this book, but if you are having trouble advocating for yourself, if you're having trouble or issues doing that, if you're feeling like you can't do that, listen, I recommend a book. And I'm recommending this book because it was recommended to me by Dr. Darius Daniels. And the book is entitled Your Perfect Right. It's by Robert Alberti and Michael Emmons. It's called Your Perfect Right. And there's a quote in this book by Alan Alda. And the quote says, be fair with others, but then keep after them until they're fair with you. So you have got to be assertive where it's needed. Because if you don't, the impact is this, that you, as a humble leader, you're going to feel unappreciated. And when you start feeling unappreciated, then you try to dig deep and try to remain motivated by a sense of purpose rather than personal accolades. And it's really not about accolades at all. It's about, hey, appreciate what I've done. This is what I've done. And I'm going to stick to it until what I have contributed is acknowledged. Because if you keep consistently being undervalued, it can erode your morale. It can lead you to question your role and your impact in the long term. And I think I've said this before, probably in a different session, about you got to set those boundaries up, because when you have boundaries, there are certain things you're just not going to wink at. There are certain things you're not just going to nod your head at. There are some things you're going to advocate for yourself. You're going to speak up. You're going to be assertive when the time is necessary for you to be assertive. So remember that. Be fair to other people, but keep after the other people until they're fair with you. All right. So another thing that could happen when humble leaders are operating as humble leaders, you're often misunderstood. Oh my. Y'all looking at somebody that's been misunderstood more often than not. Humble leaders are often misinterpreted as weak, passive, or lacking confidence because their humility can be mistaken for insecurity or lack of assertiveness. And probably 99% of the time, that's not the case. Again, being humble doesn't mean be passive. But sometimes others may fail to see it. They may fail to see that you're humble, you're meek, if you will, but you are not weak. Oh, this kind of misunderstanding can lead or result in your leadership style being dismissed, overlooked. I've seen where leaders come in and they give instructions, and soon as they walk out, the people they gave the instructions to never mind what they said. We're going to do it this way, because they have dismissed not just their leadership style, they have dismissed their authority. And it doesn't mean that the leader didn't have integrity and didn't have clarity. You can have all of that. But the mere fact that you lead from a place of humility, sometimes they can dismiss your authority. And it's up to you to make sure you're not dismissed. All right, y'all, because listen, the impact of being misunderstood can lead to, again, frustration. It can lead to confusion. Not for the people you're leading, it can lead to confusion for you because others might not fully grasp your vision or your approach. And it may cause you to start questioning what your vision is, where it is you're trying to take the team, the business, the ministry. You got to make sure that not only are you clear, not only are you walking with integrity, but that you stand on business. You heard, stand on business. So, another thing that could happen is this one. you can feel used. People love to have people working with them and working around them and working for them who are humble. The trouble is sometimes you get used because you have a willingness to serve and to put others first. And that can sometimes put a target on you for people to exploit you. That's why you need boundaries. You need to know when to say no. No is a complete sentence. I said no is a complete sentence. You got to know when to say no. You got to have those boundaries up so that people don't take advantage of your generosity, of your reliability, of your low key demeanor. They know if they have a go getter, they have a person who is reliable. They know if they have a person who can get it done. They know this already because your work speaks for itself. But you have to put the boundary up where you don't feel pressured to say yes just because they gave you praise. You have to be able to say no, even if they're disappointed. Hmm. Because if not, you may find yourself shouldering responsibilities that they can handle. You'll start shouldering responsibilities that are not yours. That's why you got to be able to say the hard things, do the hard things, like saying no. Like, no, that's not why I'm here. I don't do that. And setting those boundaries. And I know we can prioritize success of the team over our personal needs. I know, been there and done that. But listen, being used too often can lead to exhaustion. It can lead to you becoming resentful. And God forbid you get burnt out because you won't say no. It's important for humble leaders to establish healthy boundaries and advocate for yourselves so you can avoid being taken advantage of. That's the other side of being a humble leader. Yes, we want to avoid becoming prideful because we are good at what we do, but we also have to set boundaries so we're not taken advantage of by those who don't know how to do what we do. So listen, I'm gonna give you quickly, and we're gonna close this out. I'm not gonna elaborate. I'll put it in whatever document is created after this. How you, as a humble leader, can navigate these challenges. Number one, set boundaries. Set boundaries. You have to recognize when you're being used or overlooked and take steps to set clear boundaries. Number two, advocate for yourselves. You may not be comfortable with self promotion, advocating for your own achievements, and you may not even be comfortable with talking about your contributions without arrogance. But listen to me. You're going to have to advocate for yourself. You're going to have to speak up when you are being underestimated, overlooked, and undervalued. You're going to have to speak up. Advocate for yourselves. Number three, build strong relationships. Being misunderstood can often be addressed by having open conversations with your teams, with your peers, and explaining your leadership style and your vision. See, clarity can eliminate a whole lot of confusion. but have the conversations. So build those strong relationships, because when people know where you are, who you are, and where you're trying to go, they can better support you. So build strong relationships, have those conversations. Number four, seek mentorship and support. Because sometimes the truth of the matter is, sometimes we can be in tight situations and we don't really know how to navigate this thing. But if we have a mentor, if we have support through a coach, if we have someone who can help us or give us guidance, that will help us navigate certain challenges, because some challenges come up that you have never seen before, you've never experienced before. But a mentor can give you advice, a coach can coach you through it. So seek mentorship and support. And then lastly, reflect on personal growth. Humble leaders often prioritize others. That's just what we do. We prioritize the good of the team. We prioritize the vision and the mission. We prioritize everybody else. But it is essential for us and for you to take time for self-reflection and celebrate your own personal growth, because you're not just helping others grow, you're growing too. You're growing too. So recognize your own achievements, celebrate your own growth, big or small. Celebrate the win. Y'all see me on here at the end of the month or the first day of the next month, and I'm celebrating the win. We made it through another month of TLT with Lita. This is not because I need anyone to celebrate me per se, but I am celebrating that every time we come together on Tuesdays, there is growth, not just for you, but I'm growing too. So I celebrate it and I reinforce that sense of purpose and remind yourself of the value you bring. Your value matters. Your value is important to whoever you are leading, even if it's just the person you see in the mirror. You are valuable. So reflect on your personal growth. So I want to leave you today with um, the fact, or just a reminder, that humble leadership is powerful, but it comes with its own set of challenges. Don't forget that while you are leading, developing, helping, or cultivating transformation and cultivating change in others, that you don't forget the value that you are bringing and the contribution that you are making. Be prepared for the other side of being a humble leader. All right, y'all. It's been amazing. If you all have any questions, please put them in the chat, or whenever I make the visual post. When I post that up sometime tomorrow, put your questions in the chat. You can do that. I'll answer back, and let me know how this helped you, how this caused you to be better as it relates to advocating for yourself, how it helped you to be better prepared as a humble leader. All right, y'all. Until next time, peace.